Welcome back, everybody, to the Brazilian Dragon podcast for another edition of Media Made Me. I am Felipe, and today I am joined by the lovely Dalya Black. Dalya, hello, introduce
Oh,
yourself.
hello. My name is Dalya Black. I am a multidisciplinary artist here in Los Angeles, California, but originally from Boston.
Yes, that was one of the first things we bonded over, Boston. Dahlia and I met in a stand-up class. We are also like someone else you will hear on the series, Lonnie Dangerous. We are Heidi's hoes. Um, Dahlia is an icon, one of my favorite comedians here in the Los Angeles area. And Dahlia, what brought you out to LA originally as a multidisciplinary artist? And I can't wait to dig into your past and like learn more about like what inspired you media wise, but like tell us a little bit about yourself.
I came out to Los Angeles because I was very tired of snow. And I was trying to figure out where would be good for me. And LA just made the most sense. I was originally a filmmaker, mostly writing and directing, but also did a bit of acting in my early days. And fell in love with it, but then kind of fell out of love with it during the pandemic and moved on to a new hyperfixation with stand up comedy. And I'm enjoying that significantly more right now. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to like get to know more about like your story. I also was over the winter, so that's probably why I moved to LA. Like when people like consider where they want to go for like the entertainment industry, it's like New York. Like people consider staying in Boston, also like Chicago. But I was like, no, I need to be somewhere warm. I cannot
Yeah.
deal. Like I did so many years of the snow already.
It's
Um,
pretty amazing when you have like depression to like not have seasonal depression on top of depression. It's like intoxicating.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's also, you know, what makes me sad is that kids these days will never experience snow days like we used to, because now they're just going to be like, okay, Zoom school.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, snow days were such a treat. Like, I loved a good snow day, and they were just excuses to go watch TV, play video games, like have an extra day off. And I feel like we should just like be given societal random days off where the whole world shuts down. You're not allowed to like leave your house. Like, obviously the pandemic was a very traumatic experience for so many people, but there are parts of like the lockdown experience that like I feel like were good for people's mental health in some weird way. Like the communal, like everyone was experiencing this. They had to like focus on taking self-care a little bit more seriously. Now everyone's like back out and running again, and like I feel like we lost a little bit of our own like self-care needs versus like the corporate capitalism world that we live in.
I think that there's definitely something to be said about like mandatory cozy days.
Yeah.
And like,
Paid
really,
time off.
yeah, yeah, and just yeah, exactly as you said, just like stopping. And like there is nothing you can do. Like you can go shovel and then go nowhere because everywhere's closed.
Mhm.
So it is really beautiful. I definitely that is one thing that like I do miss about Boston that is not available in Los Angeles. We don't get like fire days.
Yeah. Earthquake days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dahlia, what was like your earliest experience with like media and like what drew you to the entertainment side of the industry or just like entertainment as a whole, storytelling, that kind of stuff? Do you have any like core memories that you associate with it?
Yeah, so, I started doing burlesque right when I was 18 years old, and I, loved it. I thought it was, like, really incredible, and then I got into my first movie when I was 21, as an actor, yeah, and, I really fell in love with that. I really enjoyed that experience a lot. I loved the permanence of it. Like, there's something about, like, doing a burlesque show, like, working so hard on your act and, like, then having somebody go like, "Oh, when is your show?" And then being like, "Ah, it was a week ago." And they're like, "Oh, can I, like, see it?" And you're like, "No."
Yeah. Kind of like comedy.
Yes, yeah, totally. But, my movie is, like, still up, like, you could go find it if you want to.
Do you want
You
to drop
probably
it or no?
like
I was
it's
gonna
like
say if you want to tell everyone where they can find it, you have this is your time, Dahlia.
I'm not gonna plug it. But I really enjoyed that experience. And then I moved on to, I kind of operate that I can only have like one hyperfixation at a time for the most part. I usually have like my day job, and then I will have my rest of my time doing whatever hobby it is. And so I switched from doing burlesque to doing film acting. And pretty quickly, I was like really disappointed with what roles were available to me. I found that I was like consistently being cast as like mom or like prostitute. And it was just unfortunate. And so I started writing my own work, and that opened up a whole new level of love and expression and vision and all of these different things that I just didn't even know I had inside of me.
That's awesome that like you're letting yourself kind of experiment and be free. I can't wait to like dig into like different pieces of your story and like get to know you better. This is also something that I've been wondering as I've been talking to like our mutual friend Allie. So your main hustle, that like your full-time job, is that like I know a little bit about it and I don't want you to like say anything that you don't want to share, but like would you say that like it is completely separate from your creative ambitions and it's like something you can focus in and then you can do your side hustle? Because I've been thinking a little bit about like, I don't know, this is a frustrating industry to be a part of, like the gig to gig stuff that like you're not really like achieving what you want to do full time. Like find something a little bit more fulfilling as an individual as a main job, and then like maybe a side job, like your side passion can be pursuing like the creative stuff as like a different way. And I know Allie's felt similarly as an actor, and now she's focusing on doing something else with her career and then doing acting on the side. Is your main job at all connected? Like, do you see it as part of the entertainment industry, or is it completely separate and that's just like how you pay your bills and then you do all your side hobbies outside of it? I don't know if that
That's
makes sense.
It totally makes sense. My job, I work for an influencer, which is
Yeah.
hilarious and definitely related to the entertainment world, I would say, especially the entertainment world as it is today in 2023, where so much of our entertainment is on Instagram. Um, However, my personal like 8 hours is not typically spent doing a ton of creative stuff, but I do use my brain very frequently, and so like the gears get moving. And so sometimes it can take away from my creativity because I'm spending a lot of that problem solving energy on my day job.
Mhm.
But the security that I get from having a day job really offers me a lot of freedom for creative expression, because I know for myself personally, I know what it feels like to be poor and to be worried about not having a roof over my head,
Mhm.
and I it is that is what is the most detrimental to my creativity. And so for me at this moment, it's great. I feel like this job is like exactly what I need. And the way that I work from home, and it's very flexible. So if that thunderstorm of creativity just kind of overtakes my body, I can just really quickly be like, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
And like type up a bunch of notes and then, tackle them over the weekend.
I love that. And then it's also giving you the space to like feel comfortable with like your living condition, of course. And uh, it's it seems like it's more fulfilling than like doing something you're miserable just like to try to get like opportunity in the future. You're taking like your own mental health and taking it into your own hands and doing something that makes you happier for the full time, even if it's not like the most like what it could be, like the dream job. You're like making sure that you're giving yourself that space to like feel happy during the day and then also like focus on your creativity outside of it in non-work settings, which I
100.
think is cool.
It
um
also means that I can say no to projects that I don't wanna work on, which also is incredibly important to my
mhm.
creativity. Because, like, God only knows there's a lot of garbage out there that I just don't wanna be a part of. Like, I don't wanna bring more misogynistic, racist stuff into the world that, like, exists, you know?
And have I've never been to an open mic that was toxic yet. I've seen toxic performers, but I haven't been to like a mic, which is something that you've brought to me, especially as like a non-binary femme person. Like you've kind of shown me. Like, I know there's like a ton of like toxic man comedy culture stuff, but like I've never really seen a ton of it. So like the fact that you've shared those experiences, that's why I like being in comedy spaces with you and people like you who like create different types of stories that we can see in stand-up comedy scenes. So like your dedication to making sure you're a part of like inclusive spaces is awesome. And that's why I really loved Heidi's class, because it was a very inclusive space, even though it was very diverse. We had Bob, who was this 82-year-old white man from California, I think. And then all the way like to you and me and Lonnie, and we're three different minorities in different ways. And just Heidi is also a queer woman who creates this inclusivity. So that's why I love Heidi, being part of Heidi's House.
Yeah,
1 and 2.
completely agree. And I'm sure that you experienced this in Boston, but Boston has such a weird way of being deeply racist and
It's so
very
weird, right? Because like it's progressive racism, if that makes sense. It's like
it is.
hidden, it's
Very
undertone.
odd.
Whereas like you hear these stories about racism, and it's like all these overt like examples from like the South or the Midwest or like less diverse areas. But like Boston is an incredibly diverse city, but also has a ton of racism and misogyny in its roots. And like, I mean, we just need reparations for everyone.
That would
You know?
be ideal.
So when did you get interested in burlesque, like as a different form of art? Because you're the first person in this series that I've talked to that does burlesque. And I knew you like were part of the community. I didn't know that you were actively a participant still to this day, I'm assuming.
Not so much actually.
Because when you invited me and Libby to go out, I think that was like to watch, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a friend of mine was putting on a show. A friend from Boston,
Oh, love it.
that I met in the burlesque community. I so my okay, so now problematic, but back then less problematic, I guess. Favorite was Marilyn Manson. Classic teenage goth. And at that time, or maybe not at that time, maybe he had divorced Dita Von Teese, but they were a unit at one point. And so that was my first introduction to burlesque, was Dita Von Teese. And I just loved the glamour of it. And so I started getting into that vintage looking stuff with very radical feminist ideas when I was 14 or so. And then when I was 17, I started volunteering for shows and starting getting into the Boston community. And right when I turned 18, I did my very first show. And I was a very unique 18-year-old. I was already living completely on my own at that time. And so I was an old soul, as they say, which is to say, traumatized childhood.
Which is how comedy is brought out, right? One of my favorite writer strike signs was ChatGPT doesn't have trauma or childhood
Yes.
trauma. And I'm like, that's where the creativity stems from, is like your vulnerability, what makes you you.
Yes, exactly.
What other, so we know you wanted to be an actor and you were involved with burlesque, but do you remember any core childhood memories that you were like, oh, entertainment, stories, this is like where, like, this is inspiring to me, this is something I want to do? Do you have any like core either movies, TV shows, music, burlesque shows, any type of media that you consume that you're like, oh, I can do this one day?
No, but I've always been extremely artsy fartsy. Unfortunately, I grew up in a house that was pretty. It's weird because they were like encouraging in some ways where I would get like art kits for Christmas, but they would be very discouraging in other ways where art was never a viable career option. Um, and so I never really thought that I could become an artist. But it's so me that
Mhm.
it's like quite difficult to kind of even think about like younger self me not feeling that way. But I would say like my very first thing that I was like obsessed with was Sailor Moon.
That's very gay of you.
It's so gay.
Which we'll definitely talk more about like your relationship with queer stories and queer storytelling, but like pop off, keep going. With
Yeah,
Sailor
I
Moon.
mean, Sailor Moon was truly like one of the first things where I was just like, this is so beautiful, this is so magical, this is so comforting in such a like nice way. Um, and yeah, so I really loved it. I really loved Miyazaki when I was younger, Spirited Away and Kiki's Delivery Service and My Neighbor Totoro. My Neighbor Totoro I actually had on VHS, and I broke the VHS tape because I
Oh,
like watched it so many times.
You gotta be kind and rewind.
I rewind too many times. um, so yeah, so those are like the big ones. As far as like queer media, But I'm a Cheerleader was like such a huge awakening for me. I think that that was like one of the bigger.
Are you a podcast listener?
I'm not.
Not? Okay. My friends Grace and Hudson actually appeared on one of their episodes a few years ago. I don't know what if they're still actively doing it or it's more kind of like in indefinite hiatus, but they have this podcast series called Hold Up, and they look at queer media and see if it holds up. And I was on an episode about the show One Day at a Time where they had the quinceanera, which was like very recent, so of course it held up. But they like talked about like all the different types of movie. They talked about that episode of MASH, some stuff from Friends and Simpsons, and then of course like Brokeback Mountain. And definitely recommend it to any of Dahlia's friends that are podcast listeners that might be supporting their friend.
I just don't have a commute, and I feel like that's when you listen to podcasts. Is like
yeah, because you're at home, right?
And before this, like my job was only 5 minutes away from my house. Like I've done a very good job of just never having a commute.
You're efficient. You and Darius. In terms of like moving out here, so you did the acting thing for a while. Were there any like performers that you were like, and you mentioned Dita Von Teese as terms of like burlesque, maybe inspirations. Were there other inspirations in your creativity? And then now that you're a comic, do you have any like comedians that inspire you?
This is a great question. So I will say in the Boston arts community, there is, I think because nobody is like looking to get discovered in Boston, there is a sense of freedom to just be as weird as you want and as authentic as you want, and really truly make the art that you want to make. Boston has its own challenges where the city infrastructure does not support artists in ways that it should, which is like pretty common, I would say. But the Boston art scene truly makes that city so great, and it's criminal that that the city doesn't recognize them, in my opinion. And so there's a lot of artists out there that really inspire me. The bands that I performed with, dancing wise, and not musician. I am not a musician.
Although you have a great stand-up joke about your music taste. I'm not going to spoil it, but that's one of my favorites.
Yes. So the bands that I used to perform with was called Walter Sickert and the Army of Broken Toys. Huge plug to them. Very much encourage you to look them up. And they all are incredible influences on my life. Johnny Blazes is another performer in Boston who was my first introduction to gender queerness, and has really inspired me over the years, and really inspired me to kind of be like, wait a minute, like what is gender? What does any of this mean? And then as far as like mainstream people, Hannah Gatsby's Nanette was the first one where I was just kind of like, oh, stand-up does not actually need to be traditional, does it? And Bo Burnham's Inside was very much the same way for me. I think, honestly, I don't think I like stand-up.
No, that's interesting because like you don't do it in the traditional, like you do it in the format, but like you do more storytelling and like theorizing and like kind of like you mix like comedy, not with TED Talks because you're not like it's boring, but like these like it gives me sometimes like when you're really high and you have like these groundbreaking thoughts. And then like yours is
That's
just like
a great compliment.
It's like Dahlia is like, okay, but what is life? It's very philosophical, your type of comedy, and
It
unique.
is.
And that's what like Heidi continues to say with you specifically. Is Heidi's always like, you're very you, and I fucking love that.
Yeah, yeah. And you hit the nail on the head. I love philosophy. I am a huge fucking nerd for philosophy. In my first Heidi class, I made a joke about Schrodinger, and in my second class, I made a joke about Sisyphus. Like it's it is such a huge part of me, and like I don't want to compromise that. Like if you don't know who Sisyphus is, like that's totally fine. You can look it up. You can do like a quick Google and then listen to my joke again and then be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's what they're trying to say." But I think that, I really don't like the idea that you're supposed to assume that your audience is dumb. I think that that's silly, and, like and if it means I'm never gonna be famous for it, like, that's fine.
But it's also different, which is like, I mean, you specifically, I told this to Lonnie too, because I feel like you two specifically made comedy click for me in a different than level one did in comedy, where it's like very formulaic. And even like the reason I think I struggled the most with the last set of the 3 sets I've done for class is because I felt like I was out of like topics that I'm vulnerable about, but like that are
Mm,
interesting enough for me to mind comedy. Because I was like, I don't like there's these experiences and they're fun stories, but I don't know if fun stories always translate to like stand up, right? And I feel like I want to do more like observational pop culture type comedy, like because that's the stuff that I feel like I have a sense for is like talking about these niche topics in like pop culture spaces and like riffing on that, but like that's very niche and like a specific audience that I would have to find my people for. Whereas like you just go for it and like you don't really explain like who Sisyphus is. Whereas like I know I made an effort to be like, well, if you're not aware of what fucking Harry Potter is, they put this hat on every single time for my lice joke that I have about Harry
yeah.
Potter and how it's ridiculous that there was never a lice outbreak. And I'm just like, I have to dumb it down, and that's like wasted time and wasted minutes. Like you go for it, and I appreciate that. And that's why I think you and Lonnie specifically helped me unlock that comedy can be more than what I've seen and what I'm used to so far. Like one of my comedy inspirations is Nicole Byer, and I feel like I have some of the same personality as her, but I think she's phenomenal and I am nowhere near as funny as her. But I like would like to do kind of more her and just like kind of like do a madcap, like this is how my brain works. It's always chaotic, and as soon as I think of something, I go ahead and like try to like I'm thinking of like the Lion King, Timon and Pumbaa, and then I see, oh, there's a butterfly there. I want to talk about the butterfly now.
Yeah.
Then oh, I have OCD, so we can talk about that for a second. Like that's how my brain works, and you very much like I feel like I get to see how your brain works when you do comedy,
Thank you.
and it's really cool. And like I appreciate that you were in my class, so I could learn that there's other types of comedy, and we can kind of like push what the norms are of this space that we. And I feel like even comedy is evolving to like include more storytelling, but like you're pushing it even further, and I want to see like that continue to be explored in stand-up spaces.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I've had a bunch of people come to me and say that they hate stand up, but I really appreciate what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
that means so much to me because, like, I do think that it is a beautiful art form. I think it is it's so human to just like have like your singular voice, one microphone, one stage, one audience. And like, it's so it's such a beautiful thing, and it's really too bad that it's been co-opted by toxic men, frankly.
And
Um,
I'm gonna miss Sean for like the mentorship when he leaves the open mic that I like to go to. But it's also like even those spaces, like I feel like I'm not completely like the space doesn't completely get me. I like going to that space because even though they're not like me, I feel like it's a very welcoming crowd. Even like the most misogynistic guy in the room, I still feel like I never feel like super like if he does judge me, I don't really care. But like I don't feel like he's gonna come and like rip me apart. Maybe because if he did, I feel like Heidi would kick him. But you know who I'm talking about without even like saying like.
yep.
So I'm just like I want to find more spaces, and that's why I want to go to like some more mics at Tao, which is nice. This is a very niche LA comedy podcast right now, but I appreciate like that you bring different types of spaces because like you being yourself on stage, I feel like will lead me to be myself more on stage, just like by observing you. Same thing with Adam. I think Adam's a very quirky dude who doesn't like fall into the conventional stand up, what it looks like.
Yeah, I agree. I also would like to go back to your previous point about Nicole, that you had mentioned that you're not as good as her. And I would just love to encourage you to add a yet at the end of that sentence.
Well, I think Nicole can read the phone book and make it entertainment. For me, entertaining to me. I could not read the phone book and make it entertaining for myself.
Yes, but
I don't. Okay.
yet, you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, she's got a number of years on her belt that you don't have,
No.
and, like, you will get there if you just keep going. So, but if you don't add the yet, then, like, then you will get too discouraged and not and potentially quit, you know? But if you add
Oh,
the yet, then, like,
perfect.
yeah.
In terms of like your like mentors, are there any people out here that like really pushed you to be creative in your like any people that you look back upon that were like, oh, these people pushed me to like be the best Dahlia?
I am very blessed with my people in my world. I have a very beautiful community in Boston rooting me on from afar, that really very much inspires me and makes me feel safe. You know, like recently I posted my comedy on Instagram for the first time, which is terrifying,
No, I
frankly.
feel like there are parts like I am nervous to do it because I'm like, I don't know who in my family is going to see this. There's parts of my stuff that I'm like, no way, no shape, no how. No one's
Yeah.
allowed to watch this except for my brother and my family. And it's just like, I want to share more on my Instagram, but it's like, I don't want everyone to just watch it.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. Um, yeah, and so I am very lucky. As far as like my mentors are concerned, my friend James Lee is in New York City, and he was essentially my very first mentor. He is incredibly creative and is really he talks like a stoner. I hope he never watches this. He talks like a stoner, and he asks beautiful questions. It is like he is like a master interviewer of people, and really just goes so deep so quickly, and it's really nice, and it really makes me, because you know, I think that one of the questions that like I ask comedians when they're talking about their joke, I'm like, why are you saying this? Like, what greater purpose do you have for saying this? And if it's just like, I think it's funny, then like that's fine. But like you need like a like solid like why, you know?
That's part of the reason why uh, a conversation we had off air earlier. Like there were certain people that I felt like went for the jokes and like, and I've been guilty of this too. Like I think there's like a funny concept and don't really like validate it in like experience or truth, and like it's not believable if it's not, if you're just saying something because you think it's funny. Sure, you might get a laugh, but like it won't land as well, and like you won't. It. I feel like there's like a catharsis that like is involved if it's a human story.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, my why for myself is I really want to explain what it's like to be a non-binary femme in this world, and like help fellow trans people feel seen, and also help like respectful cis people who just like don't quite get it understand it a little bit better.
Mhm. Yeah. No, you've talked a little bit about like your gender exploration. Like how much of like media, you said a couple of examples. Like were there any like groundbreaking things besides like the humans you interacted with that were like, oh, and the example you gave earlier, oh, like this is like something that like I want to explore. And then were there any, once you like started exploring it, were there other pieces of media that really like helped you along the way on your journey?
Mae Martin, I think, was one of the first non-binary comedians that I had seen, and I was really inspired by them and their journey. They're a very interesting human with a very like interesting past and very like wholesome, calm energy,
Mhm.
um, and seems like a very chaotic brain.
Yeah.
And so I find them very fascinating and entertaining. Um, I think that that's My best friend Petey Gibson is a trans man, and so we talk about gender all the time. And I
Do you
am
want to plug his movie? Or is it?
he's currently on Alert on Fox. Go Petey. And yeah, he's great.
Sorry, I said movie. I meant TV show.
Yeah. um, and yeah, so we talk about gender all the time, and that is really inspiring and helpful. I love talking about it. Is something that I truly think that I could talk about for days. And I think it itches my like philosophy brain in such a way that I just like I'm so hungry to understand it, and so hungry to understand how each individual person has a very different relationship to their gender and their expectations around gender.
I feel like you would be a phenomenal like teacher of like this independent school for storytelling, and like then like every class would be like start with a Socratic seminar about like gender, and then everyone has to go do like a piece of whatever art form they want and tell a story about their gender identity, and then
Yeah,
come back, and their homework the next week would be like uh do it all again, but like, and then you would like workshop it each week. I feel like that's what I see you as, like Socratic seminars and like comedy.
yeah, yeah, that would be a dream.
Yeah.
I feel like it makes me sound like such a nerd. Like I feel like I do need to have the disclaimer that like I love monster trucks. And Demolition Derby. Like
Who are your monster
it's not
truck
all
inspirations? Do you have a favorite monster truck?
Yes, I do. Can I like pause and look it up real
Yeah,
fast?
for sure.
Um,
I'll Photoshop you on top of the monster truck for this
okay,
episode.
great. Uh, yes. Okay, sorry.
You're good.
Mm, We're gonna. I just need to
I
get
knew
the
you
name.
liked heavy metal. I did not know you liked monster trucks. You should
I
do a set about monster trucks.
I'm actually working on one, and it's because of this fucking thing. Yes. Okay. So I thought it was the mad scientist. I wanted to confirm it is indeed the mad scientist. Do you want to take that again so you can for you to edit it, or are we just going straight
No,
through
you're good. No, we're just gonna keep going.
it?
That's
My
hilarious.
favorite monster truck is the mad scientist. Uh, what I find really fascinating is that um, the mad scientist was the very first front flip for monster trucks, which like when just saying that sentence, front flip, monster truck front flip, you're just kind of like, yeah, okay, a front flip. But like the more that you think about it, the more you're like, wait a minute, how the fuck is that possible? And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. Really look at the video because
Would you
it's so
ever drive monster trucks or no?
no, I would be petrified, I think, but I love watching it. I would totally go to a,
Monster truck
stadium.
rally?
Yeah,
Nice.
I've only ever been to Demolition Derby. I've never been to monster trucks.
That's hilarious. I love this. Like you have so many like different layers. Like I didn't even know about the monster truck thing.
Yeah.
No, so like you mentioned monster trucks. What type of like, I don't want to say monster trucks is trash, but what are like your more like non-conventional, like non like, oh, I'm a very big nerd. This is the type of stuff that like is my escapism, like my trash reality TV tastes or something. I don't know what you enjoy, but like what are these things that like, oh, you think I'm this, but here's like these random things that I'm obsessed with that you would never guess.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I love monster trucks. I love Demolition Derby. I think that it is so much fun. um, I so like in New England, like we go hard on fall. And like I love like all of the like
Witchy stuff.
country, yes, the witchy stuff, but also like the country bumpkin like fall stuff. Like I love like doing like potato cannons, and I love like
Corn
doing
mazes.
corn mazes. Like all that stuff is like is my favorite. I feel like that's like pretty neutral. Like it's not necessarily like white trash, quote
Yeah.
unquote. I enjoy wrestling quite a bit. I just
Like
like,
country fairs sort of thing.
oh my god, I love county fair. Love me a county fair. um, yeah. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything else per se.
A lot of these things, there's like a performative nature into like monster trucks, wrestling, like even like the county fair. I feel like there's like this it's like cisgender male drag.
That's such an interesting point. I think you are totally on the money with that. I've
It's like
never
dress up
taken
for
this
these
into
communities.
consideration. Yeah, where it's like it is a dude, but like he's wearing like a sparkly tux.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love drag, obviously. I don't think that that's surprising, but it's worth mentioning. Um, yeah, I mean, it's also really interesting too because I feel like so much of life has kind of paused and shifted because of the pandemic. Like,
Mhm.
I haven't really gone to many like big events. Like I went to my favorite band, Zeal and Ardor. I went to like their concert, and it was probably like maybe 500 people, which is like a chunk, but
Yeah.
it was like uh, relatively small,
Yeah.
and I was like amazed at like how different it felt post pandemic than pre pandemic. So I still haven't quite gotten my nervous system back in place.
What does Dahlia like to watch? Like a what's your comfort movie or show?
I watch The Princess Bride a few times a year.
Nice.
Miyazaki is a big one.
Yep.
It's really funny because I wouldn't
Have
say
you been
anime.
going to the Studio Ghibli theater releases? Because I've been
Yeah,
wanting to, and then I always forget about it. I'm like, well, if Dahlia is going, then I'm definitely gonna make an effort.
we'll fucking go. It'll be great. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I've been like really trying
I
hard to
swear. I
not.
think I swear first, so it's fine.
um, uh, yeah, so Princess Bride, Miyazaki. I really love the Before trilogy, Before Sunrise, Sunset,
Oh, I've heard
Sunrise.
great things about that one. I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah. Anything in that like mumblecore genre is very much my jam. Sometimes I think that people think it's pretentious, and I'm just kind of like, nah, add it to the list of
Who
things that are
cares?
pretentious about
Whatever
me.
makes you happy. And then like, are there any like comfort? Like, what are your all-time favorite shows? Out of curiosity.
Good Place, I think, is perfect.
That makes so much sense. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Good Place is perfect. Gilmore Girls holds a very special place in my heart, but I can't actually watch it anymore. I find it a little bit, I think I'm just a little bit too woke now to really enjoy it. But I do really love Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and I'm a huge, huge, huge Amy Sherman Palladino fan. I think that she is a phenomenal writer, and really just like understands TV in such a interesting way. Um, I really love BoJack Horseman. I
That
think
makes
it's
a
like
lot of sense also.
yeah, I think it's like the most human show that, happens to star animals. And then Taskmaster is also one of my
Oh, that
favorite.
makes sense also. Like, I feel like British panel shows also make sense here. You would
Yeah,
love My Friend Grace, I think.
yeah.
I I will send you a video or a podcast, and you'll like probably never listen to it, but I feel like Grace is like your jam.
Okay, great. I can't wait.
If only
Um,
she lived in LA and not Toronto, but like I feel like I need
mm.
to organize a meeting of you two somehow. If Grace is ever in LA, I'm gonna make it happen.
I love it. I love it. Um, and yeah, and then as far as like Harry Potter used to hold a very special place in my
Mhm.
heart. I used to really love it. I can't really watch it anymore, which is
Yeah.
just very unfortunate, and it makes me quite sad. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard when the things that you love, like I Lost is a very important show to me, and then now like hearing about the writers' room taints it a little bit, but it's like I can still cherish the core memories that I have with this show and how foundational it was to me, while also recognizing that like I'm kind of at a point where I'm like realizing a lot of the things that I love has like some shadiness to it. Like
Yeah.
it's not like as like magical. There's always like a dark side to everything. Like even like your favorite movies and shows, there's always like going to be like the corporation behind it and like what their intentions are. And
Mhm.
I don't know. We're in this weird era where like there's so much accessibility that we can learn more about it, and people are like kind of stop giving any fucks and like just
Yeah.
like are gonna like burn the ground. And I'm like kind of here for it all, but it's also like, oh, all these things that I hold up on a pedestal, when you see them for what they really are, it's kind of demoralizing.
I think it's
Yeah.
hard. I mean, I think it's also hard when we idolize humans,
Yep.
and also like remember that humans are flawed and, especially like I think that millennial. Are you a millennial or are you Gen
I'm
Z?
on the cusp.
Cusp.
Like I definitely did VHS tapes and like knew all that. Like so like I
Yeah,
feel like I can relate to that aspect of it.
elder Z.
Yeah.
Um, as a millennial, I feel like we're doing a lot of generational curse breaking, and I think
Mhm.
that we're doing a lot of like, "Hey, actually, that's, like, not okay," and, like, doing so much, work that I think that it's amazing, it's so good, but I think that it is difficult to take the wisdom that we have now because of the internet and because of like how much social justice is so readily available
Mhm.
and expect other people to kind of get it immediately and get it like even like 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and that piece I think is a really tough one. Like, so for JK Rowling, for example, that one is like just heartbreaking to me because it's like, buddy, like you have the world information at your fingertips and like you're choosing to spout this
Also
hate.
like she was kind of like making great progress, even if it wasn't like public, like in the writing. Like she was very vocal about how Dumbledore is gay.
Mhm.
And it's like just gay rights do not always equal trans rights. And like I think we need to start doing a better job incorporating trans stories and trans liberation and like making that like more accessible because uh trans siblings are under attack right now and it's very scary. And especially cis white gay men have a lot of privilege. So not to get on a big soapbox about it, but it is very scary when like these people that you like look up to then like with a public platform are spouting all this nonsense because even though we know that it's like stupid and like incorrect, they have a platform of all these like young impressionable readers of Harry Potter who might not just see some tweets and just like believe J.K. Rowling because they wrote their favorite she wrote her favorite your favorite book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, and it's really heartbreaking, and it's also like, she trained a whole generation of s people to be kind and to, like,
Yeah.
fight for what they believe in, and to hear that she's, like, fighting for this just incredibly misguided and wrong stance, it's a very tough pill to swallow.
Hmm. For sure. Do you I don't even know how to transition from that.
I know. And moving on.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what do you hope to see like future Dahlia explore and their ambitions and creative endeavors? Are there any things that like you really want to put an emphasis on in your comedy journey, in your burlesque journey, in your performance journey?
I, yes. There's a lot of subjects that I want to talk about, that I don't feel quite basically, like, where my taste is and where my talent is, there is this gap between them, and I do feel like it's closing. I do feel like, the more that I do this, the better I'm getting. I'm at like 26 gigs so far for comedy, which is, I can feel like, the difference between my first stand up gig and my latest stand up gig is night and day. It's huge, huge, huge improvement. But I'm still just like not quite there.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is like, so like my immediate goal is like I'm desperate to get more comfortable on stage. I am so I just get very tongue-tied. I get very like over-explainy and I don't want to have any silence at all because I'm like, "Oh my God, you're being entertained by me. Like this is awful." And I need to just let that go because it's like it's fine. It's 5 minutes of people's time. Um, uh, and then as far as, like, my larger goals, like, I have a lot that I wanna say. I have a lot that I think is a very like unique take on the world. I feel like I see the world very differently than most people. Um, and I think that like I have a very unique background in the sense, oh, this probably would have come up with like other activities that I do. Over the pandemic, I spoke with a lot of QAnon people to try and get them vaccinated. And so like that's how I do my activism for the most
Yeah.
part, is like that one-on-one work. And so I feel like I have this very unique perspective of um, having a very firm grasp on social justice issues and intense, radical sympathy for people who have just been brainwashed into thinking otherwise and wanting to like slowly bring them back to reality. And so right now I do that on a one-on-one scale because I find that to be easiest. Because you can really target people, but I'm really hoping that I can kind of make it larger.
In a small way, I saw someone when you reposted about how someone got your pronouns correct in an unintentional way. Part of me was like, I was like, oh, I should go in like the Facebook comments of different like people saying, "Oh, this movie is so woke," and I'm like, "Why does this bother you?" And just like try to have a conversation. But I'm like, no, I need to protect myself too much. But like, you're very
Yeah.
brave for doing that. Would you ever start a podcast?
No.
Because I feel like this is like a lot of the stuff that you're saying like makes sense for a podcast platform. But like everyone has a podcast these days, so it's like you probably don't. I don't know.
Yeah. I I'm not very lit up by podcasts. I'm not very lit up by that yeah, like, I enjoy this, like, I enjoy
Yeah.
having, like, a conversation with somebody else who's organizing it, you know? Like, I've been on a number of podcasts, in my time, humble brag, and, you know, I always enjoy it, I always have fun, but I cannot imagine. I also think that I just have because I have such a varied amount of interests, it's like, what do you want me to call this even?
that was in hindsight, like I have no regrets about what I named my podcast, but in hindsight, it is very like hard if you're trying to build a brand. Like
Yeah,
yes, I am the Brazilian Dragon as a brand, but like if I have a lot of interests, I realized that pretty like within a year of doing it, I was like, oh, I should probably like do better SEO work, like because this is like it's like what the hell is this podcast? And that's why every time I start a new project, it's like I try to make an own feed and like okay, if I'm doing a Total Drama Island podcast, let's throw it on the Total Drama Island feed and the main feed. So it's like okay, these are like this podcast is a pretty good encapsulation of what type of stuff I like to talk about, but
yeah,
it's not the very clearest when you're trying to sell it to someone.
yeah, yeah, exactly, and yeah, I don't think so. I also think that stand-up comedy is extremely potent. Like, I
Yeah.
truly think that there's, like, a lot of, like, magic in it. You know, I mentioned before, like, I truly think it is such a, like, human experience. I think there's something very primal about it, and I think that there's something so beautiful about humans relating to other humans and, like, listening in that way that I just think is lost a little bit on podcasts.
I also, at least for me, it's like a healthy way for me, even if I'm just watching, like healthy way for me to like unpack all my frustrations. Like I really like the fact that the Wednesday mics that I go to are on my Friday nights, which or my Friday evenings, because then it's like, okay, all this stress from work built up, and then it kind of just like, yes, it will still be part of like, but I will just like kind of it's released just by like laughing at the comics around me that are making jokes, and then also like I have 5 minutes to go up and just like talk and like I could theoretically talk about whatever I wanted. I try to like workshop material, but like I could go up there and just talk about like I don't know, like something random that like I want to, and it's just like the power of like okay, this is my time that I get to be up here and you have to listen to me, and like I'm gonna try to make you laugh, but even if I'm not, like you're still giving me all your attention, and like that's powerful and also cathartic, like being on the other side of it, like getting to release because like Heidi or Sean or you or someone is making a really funny joke, and I'm just like okay, like it's relaxing, and like that's why I really loved our comedy class, because not only do we like start off with like story time to tell us about your week, but it's also like, oh, it's 3 hours of a lot of like people trying to be creative and trying to workshop these funny concepts and funny ideas and just making it as strong as possible. And you get to be creative and like community building, collaborative. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And like one of my favorite things in the world is giving people notes. And I love because I think that there's something really beautiful about like being like, I didn't actually understand this, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that is like the most valuable piece of feedback that you can get is like if somebody doesn't understand, it's not going to be as funny. And so
Mhm.
like how can you make it more understandable?
Yeah. Well, Dahlia, I do want to start winding things down because I feel like we got to know you. We can always do a part two if you want. But tell us
Put
where
your
we can, yeah,
hands
tell us where we can keep up with Dahlia and all your comedy adventures.
I am Dalya Black Comedy on Instagram, and I'm in a what I'm calling a mullet transition
Ooh,
from my previous stage name, which is Porcelain Dahlia. Um, and so you can Google Porcelain Dahlia if you want to see all of my previous terrible indie horror movies that I was in. Yeah.
love it. Also, I forgot to ask Lonnie this. I'm gonna have to put it in post production. But I like to ask pop culture plug. What is something that you want people to check out, whether it's a book, movie, show that like is either very Dahlia or it's something that you're enjoying right now?
Something that I feel like okay, I would like to rephrase your question and make it my own. I'm going to completely hijack and
As you
answer a
should.
question
But
that
that's Dahlia. That's we're learning about you. That's how you function.
I think that there are like 3 shows that I think that people totally snoozed on. The first one is called Patriot, which is on Prime, and it's about a CIA agent who starts leaking government secrets in folk songs
Ooh,
and is like having a mental breakdown. It's very dark, dry humor. I love it. The second one is called Please Like Me. It is an Australian
heard this.
show. Yes, I have it was on a bunch of streaming sites and now it seems to have gone away at this moment in June 2023, but I would really highly recommend that. I think that it is a very beautifully human show that I think is really hard to kind of find again because it's Australian. And then the last one is Taskmaster, which very similarly, because it's British, I think that a lot of people snooze on it, but it is just delightfully wholesome fun, and it like, to say that it changed my life is, like, a bit dramatic and also, like, kind of an understatement at the same time.
I love the potato clip. I think everyone should at least watch the potato clip and check it out. And
So good. It's
yeah,
so good.
have
Yeah.
you seen the Australian show Why You Like This?
No.
No, I feel like I haven't seen the other one that you recommended, but it's an Australian show. There's only 6 episodes. It's super gay, so I'm like
Yeah,
maybe Dahlia would like this.
done. Yes, Please Like Me is also quite gay, so
Okay,
that helps.
yeah. In terms of me, I am gonna recommend something. I don't know. I didn't think much about my question. Elemental. I love Elemental. Like if you want to go see a movie in theaters, that's what I love this week. But check out Dahlia's Rex because you hear my Rex every single week on the Brazilian Dragon at With the Fleep on all social media, Brazil Dragon Pod for all podcast shenanigans. We'll be back with more Media Made Me coming soon. And Dahlia, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. This was so much
It
fun.
was, and I can't wait to see you at the next shindig that we do.
Yes.
Uh, all right, everyone. Goodbye.